We do nature journaling every Tuesday, and this week I'm looking to do like a sort of 2-part series almost, where today I'm interested in sort of studying the way the sunflower works. And I'm next week planning on having a sunflower here for us to like paint or draw, whatever your sort of interest is artistically. And looking at the parts of the flower today and really getting a closer look at what they look like in service of understanding better when we have the real thing. So that's my goal today. And I guess let's go ahead and get started. Let me put on some music for bugs real quick. We are listening to Camille's Music for Bugs. Hopefully, if it's audible. Fantastic. Okay. Let's look at some sunflowers. So I do have a few things out. First of all, I'm just using a ballpoint pen to sketch today. I've got my ballpoint pen sketchbook. We've got some bees over here. I like to flip my sketchbook upside down so I'm not drawing on top of this. So I have throughout the pages here one sketch that's facing the correct direction, and the next one is like flipped upside down just because, yeah, easy on my wrist. I like that. It's fine. It's a sketchbook. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I've got a couple of books here. So this is plant identification terminology. It's just an old glossary that I have to look at some of these anatomical features. I know. I'm sorry. Listen, it's not gonna be that scientific. I promise. What it is going to be is a loose dissection, okay, of what this flower looks like. So don't get bogged down by this. It's got a good illustration in it, okay, of what's going on with the sunflower. Yeah, fantastic. Also, right now I have pulled up this little preview sort of Lady Bird Johnson's Wildlife Center, Wildflower Center. Gosh, guys, am I even awake right now? It's impossible to say. Yeah, so this is showing us just how many different sunflowers there are out there, like native flower options. And there really are a bunch. This is just the common Helianthus annuus. But as far as just species, look, there's so many. 81 results here, which is crazy cool. Yeah, so kind of like with coneflowers, there's like a million different coneflowers. There's also a million different sunflowers that can all look very different. And yeah, next week I'll see which sunflowers I can find. Maybe we'll do a comparison across sunflowers. But for today, we are going to be looking at just, what makes a sunflower. And one of the main things that makes a sunflower is that sort of disc that it has, full of little tiny flowers. Yes, you heard that right. One of the things that makes a sunflower is the fact that it is a compound flower, basically. And so, yeah, when you think of, if you think of every flower turning into a seed, then it stands to reason that a head of sunflower seeds is forming because it's actually like a million little tiny flowers, each of which develops into a sunflower seed. I forgot to mark my aster family. Here we go. And this is just a book called Botany in a Day. It's the Patterns Method of Plant Identification, which is kind of a cool concept. I like this concept in like an artistic sense, honestly. So that's what I'm looking at. And when we're looking at the aster family, there's a bunch of different subfamilies, and coneflowers are actually a member of the aster family and a member of the sunflower tribe. So in a way, this is just a continuation of coneflowers over here. And notice just how many recognizable species like marigolds are actually in this aster family. And so when we're trying to understand what makes these flowers unique, I think it's good to understand that some of the things that we're talking about with sunflowers are also going to be true of all of these other flowers that we're super familiar with. So I just want to look at this page, Patterns of the Aster or Sunflower Family. Despite simple appearances, the asters are highly complex plants. To identify flower parts, one normally starts on the outside of a flower and works inwards, but that doesn't work with the asters. And basically it goes on to point out that every part of this flower that we're looking at kind of defies normal flower parts because the plant is structured in a totally different way, and like these little, they're not sepals in the bottom. I know I was calling them sepals on the coneflower yesterday or last week, but they're bracts. There's something totally different, and that's because inside the head of this flower are all of these tiny little florets, and even the petals around the outside, it looks like a standard flower, but those petals are actually just special florets that are a different type of flower. So each petal is a different flower, if that makes sense, which is crazy. So in something like a sunflower, here. The pitted disc of the flower head is an excellent clue to the aster family at any time of year. Look for it on a dandelion, for example, after the seeds have blown away. That's such a good illustration because I know exactly what they're talking about. I can picture that pitted head of a dandelion after the seeds have blown off. So I like this. I like to think of this pitted disc as the garden where all the little flowers were planted. So that's super, super useful. They're going on to point out that in an artichoke, those little scale-like pieces that you pull off are multiple layers of bracts surrounding the flower head, which is, again, this clue that they're not sepals around a single flower. They are a different structure altogether for the many, many flowers that are happening. Which is, yeah, very cool. So chicories, dandelions, coneflowers, thistles, all of these guys are asters. They all have these interesting sort of florets that make up the head. And on these guys, the main components are going to be these disc flowers, which are the little tiny flowers that make up that whole disc together. And then the ray flowers, which are the ones forming those petals. Let's find the sunflower family, or subfamily. Oh, I went too far. My bad. I think it was back there, actually. Ragweeds of the sunflower tribe. Oh, that's cool. And also this might be an old enough book that some of the classifications have changed, so disregard that. But yeah, okay. fantastic. This is what we're going to be drawing today. And I guess to get us started, what I'd like to do is pick out a sunflower image to sketch. And we're going to do sort of a basic like zoom in, zoom out exercise today, basically, to look at the different parts of the sunflower. And then, yeah, this will inform, hopefully, a really good painting next week. Good is subjective. But yeah, hopefully it will inform us having a really successful time painting it next week. I'm looking forward to that. Okay. Great. I want to find a good Helianthus annuus for us to draw. What about this one? I like that you can see that it's kind of blooming in parts. Sure, why not? That looks great. Oh, you can see the gosh, I can't do words today. The pollen coming off of this. Ooh, very good. What's today's date? Today is the, 2nd of July. That's insane. And I'm gonna write down what we're doing. Parts of a sunflower. So in order to do a zoom in, zoom out activity, the first thing I want to do is just get something on the page that's like a baseline, right? And then we can look more closely at certain parts, maybe. So yeah, let's just simply sketch this inside here. And I'm noticing the way that the petals overlap, and I'm gonna try and mimic that in my sketch. Again, today we're back on this ballpoint pen situation because I like, when I'm just trying to do sketches and learn about something, I like not having to worry about if I can erase it and make it better. Like, nah, just commit, just put stuff on the page. Just commit to whatever I'm drawing. Cool, that'll work. And then I'm noticing that there's petals overlapping underneath. And today, I don't really have a reason for this except that I feel like it, but I'm not really closing these lines. I'm kind of making them a little bit loose and disconnected instead of like, you know, a solid line art situation. Don't forget to drink your coffee. Okay. And so what I'm noticing with this sunflower, can I zoom in on this? Yes. I'm noticing that in the center, you can sort of see this pockmarked appearance. I'm gonna try and like just draw the center. Yeah, it looks pockmarked. So I'm just gonna draw some little marks, even though that's not really what's going on. I'm just gonna do that. And then I'm seeing that the outer edges of this disc are really fuzzy, and that's definitely these parts of the flower that are coming out, the, you know, reproductive elements of those individual little florets. But the appearance is creating something kind of fuzzy, so I'm gonna first of all let these flowers seem different from those pockmarks by making sort of wiggly little cloud marks around this. Does that make sense? I made them wiggly so I didn't want them to look exactly like those little pockmark circles I just drew. And then, yeah, let's make the outer edges seem kind of hairy, because that's what I'm noticing. And I'm gonna come back in and just like shade this whole thing and make sure it ends up looking like it's kind of hairy from all those little flower parts. cool. So I notice those things. I think I am gonna like lightly shade the inner part too so that it looks different. And I think that that's a really good approximation of this sunflower. I'm gonna also add some really light lines going down the petals here. I'm also, while I've been drawing this, I've been thinking like, oh, this feels like I'm drawing that Bee City Wichita logo all over again. I think I used the same flower species to draw that guy. Not this reference, obviously, but yeah, I've just felt extremely, extremely familiar as I was drawing it. Okay, cool. So that is our Helianthus annuus. Which I believe is just known as the common sunflower. Let's see if it has any other names. Just the annual sunflower. That makes sense. Cool. Common sunflower, annual sunflower. I'll go ahead and write the common name in there. There we go. Okay. And now let's look at this anatomy a little bit. Hello, if you're just joining us. We are sketching and nature journaling sunflowers today with the goal of understanding sort of how the anatomy of the flower works. And once we know sort of what's going on here with these plants, next week we're going to have a sunflower here that we're going to be actually sketching and drawing. And yeah, looking forward to that. Drawing or painting, whatever your vibe is. Yeah, okay, so I want to look more closely at these florets. And I also really liked that note about the dandelion head, how you can sort of see in the head of a dandelion that's had the seeds blown off that there's all of these little spots where each floret used to live. So I think I want to sketch that, honestly. So let's just give them a little circle, and I'm going to make it kind of pockmarked. Oh, you can't see what I'm doing. So sorry. And yeah, it's got all of these long bracts coming off the head, just like that. And I want to draw a little seed. Doop. Cute. And the seeds are so light and fluffy. I'm not going to bog it down with too many lines. I'm just going to kind of ghost out some outlines here. There we go. How am I going to describe this in words? Let's just say that these dents show where each flower lived or grew. I like that. Okay. Dandelion. So yeah, with the sunflower, it's quite similar. I don't know if anybody has actually seen a seed sunflower, like a black oil sunflower, like the actual seed head itself. But you can see that too if you were to like scrape all the seeds out of it. You can see left behind is this pockmarked head of a flower, just like a dandelion. Great. So I'm going to be looking at this diagram here. Again, this book is Botany in a Day, the Pattern Method of Plant Identification. And there's this nice big illustration of the floret here, which is going to be so useful for us actually looking at. And this is showing the typical disc flower right here, which is at the center of the flower. So I think trying to decide how to like highlight that basically. Let's just go ahead and I don't know, make a really dark dot right here. I hate that it's so close to the ray florets, but that's fine. And we're gonna come over here and we're gonna sketch this actual floret. Okay, so here's what we're looking at. I'm reading these different labels too, which are quite inspiring. They're little disc-like flowers. It says that there are 5 petals fused together. And then these hairs that we've been seeing that do look really hairy are actually the sepals of the flower, which is very interesting. So, oh, hi. Thank you. Thanks for the like. Oh, hi, Marin. It's good to see you. All these familiar faces. We're looking at the anatomy of sunflowers today so that we can do some really good informed sunflower sketches next week, or drawings, or paintings. Yeah, I did not realize like this little skirt right here is actually the sepals. So on a typical flower, the petals sit on top, and then the sepals are the little green leaf-like skirts underneath it. But this is a totally different anatomy, which is crazy. So let's just draw this little anatomy, I guess. Yeah, I'm gonna start at the top because I'm worried about leaving enough space for myself if I start at the bottom. So these are the stamens. That's interesting. The stamens are the male part of the flower, which would be, I guess, where we're seeing all the pollen on that one side, on the reference picture. Cool. And then this is the little stigmas, gloop, gloop, looking like an IUD up here or something. All right, that's easy to remember. That's the female part of the flower. And then we've got these fused petals here underneath. I'm gonna label them. These are fused stamens right here. This little part is the stigmas. And underneath that we've got the actual flower, which is this part right here, which again is very fused. See how this is such a weird, different, interesting anatomy? I love it. This is a really good illustration too that I'm referencing. I feel like it's really well done. It's really easy to see what's going on in it. Okay, cool. We've got this fused together petals part of the flower. And it's specifically 5 petals fused together. That's cool. And then it's got this really, really long tube, which leads to the ovary itself, which would be where where the seed would actually form. So if you think of a dandelion or a sunflower, that's going to be like the sunflower seed. Oh, this did not end up to scale, did it? That's okay. Here, I guess it needs to be much larger if we're doing it to scale, because like, yeah, okay. Woo, we got this, guys. Great, so this is the ovary. So when this flower is fertilized, the pollen is going to hit up here on these stigmas. That's where it's going to receive pollen. And the stigmas are above its own flower, so that hopefully it's getting pollen from an insect and not pollen from this flower itself, and it's not self-pollinating. Clever, clever tactic. And then that pollen would travel all the way down, or, you know, the, I mean, pollen is basically like, like sperm for a flower. And so that would travel all the way down here. Sperm plus like proteins and things like that. And then it would fertilize the ovary, and then the ovary would develop into a sunflower seed or a dandelion seed, etc. And then it's, again, super cool that these like fuzzy skirts are literally just sepals. Okay. This is calling them specifically pappus hair. Which is the modified sepals. They look like they're a little bit hairy themselves in this illustration. So I'm going to add that to my sketch. Cool. And that is a disc floret. For this compound aster flower. Beautiful. We've got that. I also want to do this ray floret, and I didn't see any like good examples of the ray floret illustrated separately apart from what was already on that page that we looked at right here. They've got this little one illustrated out to the side, and I think that's really similar to the one that was in this other book here. Yeah, so we're not going to see anything different there. So let's go ahead and illustrate that one too. Let's take it down here. And seems a little less complex. So let's start with the petal itself so that we have room for it. There we go. And we'll give it the lines. So we've got our large petal, and it's so wild to think that each petal of a sunflower is actually this like totally different structure. It's like an individual little flower. We've got this little snake tongue going on here. The ovary, and then all of these hairs. And the anatomy is the same, really, with the addition of this petal across these two florets. So I don't know that we necessarily need to label everything on here, but it could be helpful too. Like we'll label the ovary. What would this even be called, this like petal? I don't know. There has to be a different name for it though, because it's not truly a petal. It's got to be something else, right? You know, if I find out, I guess I'll let you know next week. Wild. Okay. Let's go ahead and label a few other things though. I am gonna call this just like the petal, because that's what people are thinking they're seeing when they see the full sunflower. And then these are the pappus hairs. Cool. This is called a ray floret. Let's go ahead and just add that here. So we've got these two things making up the whole disc of the sunflower. Fantastic. That's crazy. Should we do the bottom part too of the sunflower? Because it does have all of those bracts that look like a whole head of sepals, basically. But it's actually this very artichoke-like overlapping scales that are bracts, and that's a pretty characteristic part of the flower. So I think that could be valuable to add to our sketch. So let's say bottom of the sunflower. Artichoke like bract layers. Fantastic. And then, yeah, let's see. I wonder if we can find an image that would show this bottom of the sunflower for us. In one of these with multiple flowers in it, we might... Aha! Look at that. Oh, we did it. It's perfect. Look. Ha 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 ha. Okay. That's great. I love this. Okay. We're going to start with the center. This ultra hairy stem. Boop, 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 boop. Drawing little hairs. Great. And I guess let's do like a loose outline of where this body is gonna sit. That'll work, and then we'll get the petals going around the outside last. Yeah, let's start in the center, because that's the way that they're overlapping. It kind of looks like it goes around in a spiral almost. So let's start right here, because this one looks like it's sitting up the most. Fun, 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 fun. All right, and then okay. This will also, I think, help inform drawing the flower from, you know, the front angle too, because often these little parts are visible. They're kind of sticking out. And I think it's helpful for my brain anyway to understand, like, oh, these parts that are sticking out, like they don't have to stretch all the way to the bottom of the flower. Like, they're not huge leaves sticking up. They're quite small little bracts. And so for that reason, like, you know, the shape is a little bit thinner, and it'll make more sense, I think, trying to sketch them. Cool. I guess that will work. I'm pleased. Let's throw some petals on here. And I'm being really loose and imprecise with these petals because they're not the important thing that I'm trying to conjure here. You know, I'm really more interested in understanding how the bottom of this flower works. And so with that in mind, I am gonna maybe go through and like darken up the edges of this. And I mean, they're quite hairy, but I guess they have some fine lines going down them. But they're not very distinct lines, you know? They look really fleshy too, I'm noticing. Which makes sense. And now that I've sketched this out, I'm really seeing how artichoke-like this bottom of the flower is. That's pretty cool. Okay, and again, this is, thank you. This is a trait that all of those asters are going to have in common. So it's not just for sunflowers. Artichokes are a member of this family too. Thistles would be a member of this family. Chicory, dandelions. So yeah, if the things that we're drawing here today seem really familiar and you're like, oh, this isn't just sunflowers, like this doesn't make sunflowers unique, you're correct. That is correct. This is something all of these flowers have in common. And the way that a sunflower works is just, yeah, a little bit different, but pretty similar stuff. Great. Let's see. I don't want these bees to distract us. Sorry, this is from like several weeks ago. Let's open this back up to some flowers here. Haha. Okay. I guess like I have one little spot left for a sketch. I did find a really cool reference that we should take a look at, and that's this. This is from education.teamflower.org, and they did some dissections of these flowers, which I thought was super cool. So they have several different asters, or I say aster. Aster is a genus. What I mean when I'm saying asters today is the family Asteraceae. But look at this: marigold, dahlia, the aster on the top, a sunflower, another sunflower. Isn't that cool? How you can see the way that these discs all come together. I just think that that's super neat. And so I really want to do this cross section. I think that's a really cool just bit of information for us to look at, to understand with our little brains. Look at that. That's so cool. Okay. So let's do a cross section. Why not? I think that's good information. I'm going to start with drawing this little section here. Beautiful, beautiful. And then we've got those like layers of artichoke-y bracts coming off the bottom. So, you know, let's go ahead and just sketch some layers there. Awesome. Let's go ahead and label the bract so we don't forget. Great. And then we get this little disc. Okay, and so what I'm noticing when I'm looking at this reference is that there's this sort of like dome underneath, and it's hard to tell at this stage of growth like where the dome ends and the ovaries begin. But we do know for sure that they are attaching in there. So I'm going to kind of just draw lines to show the direction that they're growing. And yeah, I guess let's sketch in some ovaries. For this flower. And then I guess like we're seeing these long tubes. It's so hard to really sketch this with a ballpoint pen, but we're still like getting information from this. We're still improving our understanding of what's going on. So that's fine. It's fine. We're going to add some more tubes coming off of those, which are going to have those fuzzy stamens on the end, or stigmas. Perfect. I think that's great. And I'm not going to do layers behind this first layer because that's going to be very confusing as a sketch. But I think this is showing us everything we need to know. And then I'm noticing we also have some that are like sticking out even further, which makes me wonder maybe what we're drawing here are just the bracts and they haven't like bloomed yet. And so maybe the ones that are sticking out a little bit further are the actual blooms where, you know, the reproductive parts have emerged. That makes sense to me. Yeah, I'm gonna make a note of that, I guess, but form it as a question and say reproducing florets, question mark? Great. And then, yeah, the last little step here is just to draw in these petals. And I think something that might be important to show is that the petals are sort of coming up out of these edge florets. So let's just do that, I guess. Okay. I think that that is good enough. I think that that's showing us everything we need to know. And we're gonna get these little hairy stems in here with some tiny little leaves that are also hairy. And I'm gonna say this is a cross section so that when I look at this in the future, I'm not like, what on earth is happening here? Cross section of flower. Fantastic. I feel pretty good about the way that this ended up. So just like a tour back through the sketchbook, we've got this basic sunflower here, the common sunflower, these little blooming parts in the middle, and then the fuzziness that comes from these other florets forming. I guess these are the bloomed ones because the actual flower is popping out. And in the middle, it's still like a little pockmarked area of buds sticking up that haven't quite bloomed. And then over here, we drew a dandelion head with all the little dandelion seeds having blown off of it because that showed these little pockmarks. And that's a good illustration of the way that all of these individual flowers fit into this seed head at one point. Moving on, we drew the different types of actual flowers that are on this plant. This disc flower, which is the actual main head of this sunflower, with all of these different parts. Everything's very fused together. There's a little ovary fitting deep in there, and then these super fuzzy former sepals that are developed into hairs, and then the actual flower itself sticking up out of the top, which I'm sure is what's blooming down here in the middle. And then the ray floret, which is a little bit different. It grows around the edges of the flower, and each produces one of the petals that you see, which I'm sure, again, has a name. I just cannot think of what it could possibly be. It's not in my brain anymore if it ever was. I'll see if I can figure out what that is tomorrow. Or next week? Yes. Fantastic. And then we also drew some bigger picture aspects. We've got the bottom of the flower with these very artichoke-like overlapping bracts that grow on the bottom of the seed head or the flower head, which again, very aster quality, asteraceae quality, because it's a weird multi-compound flower head, so it's all a little different from typical flowers. So looking for that can help tell us if what we're looking at is an asteraceae family member. And then finally, we've got this little cross-section of the flower, thanks to this Team Flower Education page, where we have cut into the head. You can kind of see the head with all the little ovaries growing out of it, the little sepals, and then the actual blooming flowers with these reproductive parts sticking out. All of it nestled into a little bed of bracts and surrounded by a halo of petals growing out from those edges of the disc. And that's our parts of the sunflower. And I know we're ending a little bit early today, but that's perfect. I've actually got to get out of here this morning. But next week, I'm going to bring in a sunflower. I'm hoping I can find a blooming sunflower. If that's an issue, I'll just find some other aster we can look at. But I'm going to be bringing in a flower, and we're going to be doing like one big pretty illustration of it. I'm going to be using watercolors because that's my personal favorite. You guys can use whatever you want if you want to draw along with me. And we're going to use all this information that we just learned to understand it to inform our painting, which is going to be pretty pretty fun. I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, thank you guys for joining me this morning. I hope you have a wonderful Tuesday. I will be seeing you next week. Stay cool out there if you're in Wichita. It is nightmarishly hot. And just remember, if you feel the urge to stop and sketch the flowers, feel free to take some pictures of them so that you can get yourself back into the safety of the air conditioning when it's miserable outside. That's all.